This is the Miops Slider Plus, an all-in-one automated slider that is great for both photographers and video creators. And these are the kinds of shots you can get by yourself, adding motion to your video to up your video game. You can do motion time lapses and even focus stacking, along with several more advanced types of time lapses and video creation with this tool and the app that comes with it. You may be here because you want a step-by-step tutorial of how to use this, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But really the verdict of what is this tool and why I would recommend it. If you are looking to add motion to your videos, if you're a solo videographer, or if you're doing things like documentary or even narrative work, this is a great little tool that is very portable. It comes in a small carrying case. It's fairly plug and play. You just pop your camera on, turn on the app, you select the mode, select the position, select the timing, and you can go from there. At $400, there are cheaper alternatives, but to be honest, I have not used any of the other cheap alternatives from other brands that I have seen on Amazon, BH Photo Video. This is the only one I've tested, and it's thanks to Miops who sent it to me. Miops, I've used their products before for things like high-speed photography. So when they asked me if I wanted to test this out, I said absolutely. I'll be completely honest, it took a couple minutes for me to figure out how to use the app. There were some issues I was having, but I think in the latest update of the app, everything that I was having problems with was solved. So I've been using this a lot in the past few weeks to test out the different capabilities of shooting time lapses with motion, which is great because in the past, what I would do is just set up a static tripod, shoot a time lapse, and then add motion to it in post, which is kind of like adding a zoom in post. Yeah, it works, but you're not getting the actual change in scene that you would get with a motion time lapse on a slider like this. And you wouldn't be able to do this manually. It would be practically impossible to do this. Sometimes I was setting it up for a 30-minute time lapse, moving from one end to the other in small increments, taking hundreds of photos. And without this tool, I couldn't do this. The other thing Miops promotes this slider for is focus stacking. So if you're doing macro photography, product photography, where you want to combine multiple images with a shallow depth of field so that the product, the subject, whatever it is in sharp focus, still using a wide open aperture, then focus stacking is the way to do it, and you could automate it all with this tool. So how does this thing actually work? Let's get into that. So it has a box on the slider, and the box has a camera tripod screw. One of the things I'm not a huge fan of, and I would probably prefer to have like an additional connector, is this is how you put on your camera. You just kind of tighten it on and it kind of goes to the right spot, but if I want it kind of tight, super tight, you have to go a little bit more. But I haven't found an issue with sort of backing it off and leaving it about there. Now, of course, my tripod's now backwards, so I'd probably want to switch this around if I was actually shooting with it today. Now you can use the slider separately without connecting it to your camera with the cable that comes included. You have to specify which camera model, and these cables are fairly universal, but different cameras are different. So with this cable attached though, it can automatically set things like the number of photos needed at specific intervals for your motion time lapse, instead of you having to calculate, okay, in 30 minutes of a time lapse, I need to take a photo every 10 seconds, and that'll end up in a 10-second video at the end of the day. It's all done within the app. And when you're starting the things like video or focus stacking, it does it automatically for us on the app. So let me walk through the Miops app. So I'm going to open up the Miops mobile app. There are two apps that show up when you look for this, but they've switched over to using the general Miops mobile app, which works better for the slider. There's this little button next to here, which is also next to the charging port, just so you know. And you press that button, there's a little red light. That turns on the Bluetooth connectivity. And then when you turn on the app, it will search for any devices nearby. All right, so now with that scene, I'm going to connect to it. And here's where you can see all of the different options for things you can shoot. So under time-lapse modes, they have basic time-lapse, long exposure time-lapse, which is pretty cool, interval ramping time-lapse, bulb ramping time-lapse, and HDR time-lapses. Under other modes, they've got basic video, free mode, focus stacking, and remote control. So free mode, remote control, those are kind of cool if you have a shooter that is doing video with this and they want to just be able to go back and forth. Also with free mode, what you can do, or with the basic video mode, which I've done, is I've set it up, and let me just go into free mode to show you. All of these modes kind of work similarly, where there might be different settings at the top where you set the movement, the play time, and then the mode. On the mode, you'll notice that there's a one-way, two-way, or continuous. Continuous is nice because if you are shooting video by yourself, if you're a content creator, YouTuber, but you want to up your game with a little bit of motion in your video, you can just set this thing to go back and forth slowly, and you get that automatic motion that you would be hard to get without a second shooter. So under movement, what I do is you have your A point and a B point. So for the A point, I'm going to go in, and then I can just tap and hold the slider and move it to the spot that I want. So once I am happy with that, I can click to set this point as the point A. Then I click B, which is automatically set from its previous default settings or from the previous time that I set this up. And it looks like it's going like all the way, which is typically what I would want it to do. Let me make sure I turn on my camera. And this shot is just of this light over here, which is not interesting. And then when we're happy with that, I'm going to set this position as B. We can go back, which is the button in the top left. And remember, playtime, that's how long it takes from one end to the other. So you have to sort of play around with this to see what speed you want. Down in the bottom left, you can save this as a preset, or you can set this to start at a specific time, which is freaking awesome if you're doing like nighttime long exposure time lapses or things like that. If you want to set something up and then just have this start automatically at a specific time. And then you just click the check mark in the bottom right, and now it's going to move to the A position. Let me turn on video. So this is in free mode. So I'm doing the video myself, but if I was in the video mode, once I click start, it would automatically start recording video on its own because it's connected with the cable. So you can see now that it is moving. And I want to show you one other mode. So I'll show you the basic time lapse, which is the other one that I've used quite a bit. So here again, we set our A points. So I'm going to set this all the way to one side. So you just click, or not click, you tap and hold. Here we go. And then set this position as A. And then now I'm going to go to my B. Just make sure we're at the right spot. Actually, I'm just going to stop that, and I'm going to say go back to point A because I already know B is at the end. Let me make sure I'm in photo mode. If I on my camera, that is. And then here's where I can set the length. So FPS playtime. So if I want the playtime of my video to be 5 seconds long at a frame rate of 30 frames per second, it will automatically calculate how long it needs to move and how many photos it needs to take based off of our interval. So I can set my interval to 10 seconds. This interval will depend on what you're shooting a time lapse of. If you're doing an entire day of time lapsing from sunrise to sunset, you're likely not going to want to take a photo every 10 seconds. But if you're photographing something being built rather quickly or something you're doing and you just want to speed it up, 10 seconds is something that I've found to be a pretty good speed. But a lot of this is kind of practice, and remember, you can always save in the bottom left a preset, which is so cool. and then you just click the check mark and it's going to start working through. And you can kind of see it's going through the interval, the length, which we had, I think it was every 10 seconds. Boom. Yep, 10 seconds. And it goes through the exposure at the top. And then down below, you see the elapsed time, and it's going really slow. You're not gonna be able to see the motion, but what's beautiful about this tool is that it's making micro motions between every frame, something you couldn't do manually, which is why a tool like this is super cool. And let me just talk, so this is moving left to right, or right to left on my end actually. But if you were doing focus stacking, all you would do is you would point the camera down the length of the slider and you'd be moving towards your subject. And you just set it to take like 4 or 5 frames. Generally, I wouldn't find wanting to take more than that to combine into an image, but maybe on your case, you could do more. And you just set your camera. It might look like it's, and I did a sample over here where I'm taking photos of this fake plant, and you get one photo of the front in focus, in the middle, in the back, and then you can combine that all in post-production. So some of those time lapses that you saw of me building the treehouse, water in my backyard, the sunset and the clouds moving, that's kind of the stuff that you can photograph with this. And it's a pretty awesome tool. So while this goes back and forth, I just wanted to give my final verdict on this product. I actually do really like it. I don't always create reviews for tools or gear that is sent to me by brands. And whenever I do, I try to be completely honest about if I'd actually use it. And the Miops Slider Plus is a tool that I'm super excited to have in my camera gear now. I'm gonna use it for both video creation and photography. And I definitely think it's a worthwhile tool to look at if you are interested in doing any sort of motion time lapses, focus stacking, or just simply adding a little bit of motion to your videos. So let me know in the comments what you think. Did you just get a Miops slider? Are you thinking about getting one? Is there an alternative that you're interested in and you're comparing it to the Miops Slider Plus? Let me know in the comments below. Have a beautiful day and we'll see you next time.